a great opportunity. We've been working with some organizations in Oklahoma. It's actually quite a growth area for us right now, both from the stripper well side and the conventional production side of the business. So I think this is just a great opportunity to, spend 15 or 20 minutes going through what we're doing overall in general in the energy space. And a lot of our technologies apply across multiple verticals. This of course is dedicated to the energy markets. So what is Osperity? So Osperity is an intelligent visual monitoring platform. And what does that mean? So what that really means is we enable organizations to really do more with less through the use of artificial intelligence on the visual side of things. So we're actually doing artificial intelligence using computer vision to actually advise visually what is going on in the field and alerting to that. And that's what I'll go through is how that works and where you determine ROI, where you see advances in security, environmental compliance, great advances in safety and lowering risk management scores. So we'll roll through that here over the next 15 or 20 minutes. So how do we do what we do? So Osperity is a software company that obviously, like most software companies, needs some sort of hardware at the edge to enable that intelligence that they're presenting to their clients. So for us, our data collection device is cameras. We like to call them visual sensors because it fits into the whole sensor world and IoT world. So whether they're cameras that we put in place for you, or whether they're cameras that are existing legacy cameras on the field, we actually only need to put our cloud bridge, which is our edge computing device and network video recording system at the edge. So what happens is an activity happens on site. Let's say, it's a tank battery and you want to know every time just a tanker comes in to load. So when that event occurs, you are alerted via email with an image of that event happening, which allows you to click straight through into our platform and watch it if you want. And that information is then stored in our platform. So that event occurs, it goes to our cloud bridge, and it says, I'm 60% confident this is something that Steve wants to know about. So it sends it to the cloud where we put our deep dive analytics on it. And then it says, Steve wants to know about this right now, but Olaf's fine getting it in a report at the end of the day. So the time from the event occurring, whether it's a flare stack that's too high or a flare stack that's shut off, or a vehicle coming in, a valve stem open or close, any anomaly or exception that we can handle is about 5 to 7 seconds from that occurrence to you getting an alert that that has happened. Then that data is stored on our platform called Reach, but we can also export and send that data to other enterprise data platforms. For instance, IBM Watson's asset management platform or your internal SCADA platform. We can send those alerts and that imagery so you're working on one single source. It doesn't have to be our platform that's delivering the knowledge that you're gaining. The other thing that we do is cooperate with other sensors in the field. And one that we do quite often in Northern Canada is with H2S detectors. So when an H2S detector goes off on site, we're actually sending the alerts to multiple people with imagery showing that people are there or they aren't, and do they have their Scott air packs on or not? Because as we all know, H2S is fatal very quickly, and most of the sites with high concentrations or exposability to it are generally unmanned. So what does our platform provide in general, our technologies that are on it? So you have the ability in larger facilities or larger assets that are manned to actually view everything live as it's happening on site. As mentioned, we have support for a multitude of cameras that are already in the field, as long as they're ONVIF compliant, which is about 80% of the cameras in North America. We actually manage remotely the health and much of the maintenance of those cameras is all done remotely. The computer vision AI side that I mentioned, and then of course the API for integration into other systems or systems to integrate into ours. And what this really creates is a true managed service. The cameras are out there, they're collecting data, you're getting your reports. You're not worrying about any hardware in the field. This is just an overview of what I really just touched on. But more importantly, let's get into what are some of the use cases. And there is a multitude. I'll go across in some generalities of different analytics that we use and different ways that our clients use it to, reduce the risk, as I mentioned, save cost, and really make their operations far more efficient. A big use case of ours is the ability to remotely inspect and monitor and be alerted to different activities, both of equipment, people, and vehicles around remote distributed assets. So in this case, there's an example where there's a field of 70 wells, and they used to have 3 people managing that area over about 150 miles. That went down to 1 person, which made it very difficult to actually have eyes on these wells within their internal specifications, but also within their regulatory board obligations as well. So in this case, there's a lot of things going on. Most importantly, every day over the period of about 20 minutes, he can go in, watch the equipment live, go back and see what happened over the past 24 hours if they desire by searching different filters. But in this case, what we were doing is actually monitoring the cadence of the pump jack, as well as alerting to any vehicle or person entering the lease, because this was on private land and it was accessible, but it was a private area. So they were alerted to variance in cadence of the pump jack, and they were also alerted to the entry of anything into these particular locations. And what they really saved their money on was the reduction in people and the increased inspection capabilities they had to actually put imagery to an inspection. It wasn't just drive the truck, do a loop around the fence, everything looks good, and away you go. So, that's a big one on multi-asset companies. In this perspective, you can tell it's Canada, there's snow on the roof. This is a floating tank roof, and they're equipped with a ton of technology, although the level indicator is on the inside of the bottom of the roof. And what they have issues with is snowpack. So we actually have set up an analytic that alerts them when the snowpack hits a certain level, so the automated roof is actually shut off, because they had a couple of collapses with weight and also overextension of the roof on this particular area. Most importantly, it took the necessity for a human to climb to the top of this 100,000 barrel tank and actually inspect the roof every couple of days. We also have, and I'll get more into this, is an autonomous inspections module that actually sends you the inspections that you want at the designated times. So in this case on the left, we're doing manual inspections where the operator's doing the inspection. In this case, we're actually sending you the inspections, saving even more time. From an environmental perspective, we've got quite a few use cases. And, you know, in the case of this image and protecting sensitive areas, this particular client has multiple water reservoirs that they manage. And one of the issues they were having was the dumping of dirty water into a clean water reservoir. And secondly was theft of the fresh water. So what we have set up here, and this is a fully solar powered system, is when a tanker enters in or a person enters into this location, they actually get alerted at their control center, and they subsequently get that alert and they validate that that truck is supposed to be there. And then they remotely turn on the pump that the operator of the truck then has the ability to fill with water. So it greatly decreased their theft to zero, because there's no way to get the water out with, they added fencing, and then this particular pump system. So this is again, an example of us cooperating with other sensor systems. We do a lot of work with thermal cameras. In this case, this is in southern Texas in the Eagleford, where they want to understand the size of their flare. Is the flare on? What direction is it blowing? To maintain regulatory compliance. So in this case, we're determining temperature of the flare, which in their eyes relates to how clean it's burning. But more importantly, from a regulatory concern, we're alerting in this instance, the flare is actually bigger than it should be. So they're getting an alert because it's outside of the designated boxes or areas on there. So that is a big environmental fine in that area should they be too big or smoking. One analytic that is being released very soon by us is the ability to do this and actually do it more accurately with an optical algorithm that we've created that will also determine smoke. And that smoke reason is the color of smoke obviously indicates how clean it's burning. And when you look at Colorado, which I'm very familiar with, Wyoming, they have some very stringent flaring regulations now. Again, getting back into the ability to remote critical, inspect and monitor critical infrastructure and alerting to a multitude of different anomalies that may occur within that infrastructure. So more and more sites are becoming unmanned or with fewer people on them. This gives them abilities through their control centers or through their various production people to have the ability to be alerted proactively to events occurring. On the safety side, one of the biggest safety comments we get from our clients, big and small, is getting people out of their trucks and driving around to locations to do inspections, see what's going on, going to site because a SCADA control sensor is saying something is wrong. If we're on that site, they're actually able to see what may or may not be wrong and then send the appropriate person without having to go out there to determine the problem themselves. So we do a lot of work around hazardous areas, understanding safety zones and activity. You know, in this case, just from an operational perspective, we're also timing how long these trucks are at a set of risers. So the control center can monitor and tell them, you know, you've had your 40 minutes to offload, what's the problem? As well as we're monitoring the number of trucks that are waiting at these large riser facilities. And they actually use that information to reroute to other locations to reduce non-productive time. In this case, you know, there are zones around the risers that people shouldn't be at, and we're alerting to that as well. because it's difficult to see. The operations team see when there's a set of 8 risers at a midstream facility to see through the trucks, obviously. We do a lot of work around inspecting hazardous zones, putting class 1 div 2 devices into them. This is a great example. This particular location, the compressor automatically shut down. It was fairly new, so they just remotely fired it back up. And at that time, they didn't have any visual on it. And what happened is they blew a rod through the compressor, through the building, and it was a very, very expensive mistake. So we went in and we're capable of providing them, both video and audio. So remotely they can go back and listen to say, you know, this is making this sound, we're not remotely starting it. And as I'll get to near the end is, we're also looking to develop audio acoustic analytics as well to alert to those OEM anomalies that occur in reciprocating equipment. We also do a fair bit around validation of remote workers on unmanned sites and their activity within those sites from a safety perspective, but also from a invoice and accountability perspective, where finance uses it to validate arrivals and departures of contractors for billing, and then can very easily send them a visual validation of their incorrect invoice. And one of our clients saves just around 35% a month at the sites that they're on, because they can very quickly search, or they've already received that this person has arrived at, or this company has arrived at 10:45. So they relate that to the purchase order that they've generated for that service. So when billing comes in, they can validate and confirm the hours to the billing to the PO. I talked a little bit earlier about our remote automated inspections. And what those are is we have multiple clients that have really reduced the amount of windshield time they want their teams to have. And that obviously is a safety issue. It greatly reduces their risk score for mileage and man hours on the road with their insurance. And it actually gives them a better picture, figuratively, of what's going on in the field. Generally, inspections are done manually. It's a tick box. Is there any liquid in the berm? Is this valve open? Is this happening? What's going on? We're actually providing, you know, in the case of this inspection on the left, at this location, there's 3 large storage tanks. And with 6 cameras, we're able to provide a 360-degree inspection for them. And we deliver those inspections twice a day, the start of the day shift and the start of the night shift. And they subsequently also use this information to fill out their regularly scheduled government mandated regulatory inspections. And the regulator in this state is actually very impressed that they're getting true time, date stamped imagery of what's going on in that period, and they can look at it over time. So one of the ways that we have clients using this too is liquid leak detection, and determining what that liquid is not easy visually. Not easy for 2 reasons. One, generally E&P companies don't want to provide us, you know, 100, 200, 1,000 images of various leaks that they've had to train the models. The other difficult part is differentiating the fluid. So when you look at areas that do have standing water, there's a lot of freeze thaw, there's rain, they can generate a lot of false positives or incorrect exception alerting. What we're doing here is, if they want to see an asset and see a particular burn or a wellhead or a tank, we're sending them an image every hour if they want, every half hour, that they can quickly on their phone, on their iPad, on their computer, take a look at that email and say, no, there's nothing leaking, we're good. And you're building a timeline should an incident occur to actually define the volume that may have leaked in that time frame. So as we work on liquid leak detection, this has been a very widely accepted, both by companies and by regulators, way to understand and validate that there are no leaks. Some of the new technology, excuse me, that we're working on, as I mentioned, fire and smoke detection with optical cameras. And the great thing about that is IR or thermal cameras are very costly. And this allows more opportunity for clients to use it while running other analytics on an optical camera. We will have, that'll be out at the end of this month. The valve stem opened and closed validation will also be the end of this month, as will PPE detection. So the PPE that we're detecting is hard hats and reflective clothing. So reflective vest, reflective overalls, reflective t-shirt, and validating that PPE compliance on site. A couple things that we're working on greatly is advanced thermal analytics. So the ability to detect and analyze and deliver more exceptions with thermal cameras. As you can see in this image here, we're working on external tank level monitoring and quantification of the separate liquids within the tank. I mentioned liquid leak detection and audio analytics. Those are all coming down. Tank level monitoring is getting very close. We actually have 2 systems in the field right now that are collecting data for us to train the models even deeper. So when you look at training a model, you know, you need at least 5,000 images of various geographic locations, various vegetation, various temperature conditions, so that the model understands seasons. And for a company like ours, where we have stuff from, you know, Alaska to now Peru, we have a variety of vegetation and a variety of temperature zones. So it needs to really to be accurate at the rates we want it to be. We need to train with a considerable amount of imagery. So it takes a little extra time. This is something that I'd like to show. I talked earlier about integrating or cooperating with other data sources. And here, to my previous example, we're actually integrated with an H2S sensor. And this is what the client gets delivered when an event occurs. You can see the spike, the H2S level, is outside of their parts per million, which for them is 45 parts per million. It's 49.26. They actually get a visual and they can see that there's a vehicle there. They just have to click through that image to see the event live on our platform. So it gives them instantaneous access to the activity. Now, this was, interestingly enough, it was an H2S company that owns that maintains and calibrates the sensors out there actually testing it that triggered this alarm, because they were calibrating it on their annual service agreement. But the same happens in real world. We have, as far as you know, technology in the field, we have over 1,000 devices in the field across just under 60 clients, and that's on about, you know, 420 assets throughout North America, Australia, and Peru. As little as 1 device on a site, as much as our largest site is 21 devices in a large midstream facility. So, you know, in the energy sector, we really go from, you know, drilling and completions right the way through to refined products delivery, where our products are used. And our 2 largest spaces that we're in is the upstream and the midstream space. You know, really following those fluids through and ensuring the safety and applicable costs that are involved there. So that's the formal presentation. Were there any questions, or are there any questions at this point?
And you guys can also feel free to unmute yourselves if you have a question.
I bet you teachers wish they had that function in the classroom. Mute and unmute their students.
All right. Well, if you guys also have any questions, if you think of something afterwards, please feel free to, email Paul, email me, or anyone that you can get a hold of, and we'll make sure to get you to the right person. I want to thank everyone for coming out today. Like I said, if you have any questions or you need a certificate or anything like that, please just email me at tklaus@soarok.com. I'm going to thank Osperity again for coming out and for giving us all this great information. SOAR is charged to make sure that Oklahomans know about the newest technology, and this hits that right there. So thank you guys so much.
Thank you, Tawny, and thank you, SOAR, for continued support. Oh, is there a question that came up?
Just someone saying thank you.
Oh, okay, perfect. Excellent.
All right,
Thanks,
guys.
everyone.
Thank you.
Bye now.